Welcome back to Business. Today we are talking about is manufacturing and competitiveness of Kenya in the regional market and at the global level, which is very, very critical. With me in today's Job Wanjohi, who is the head of policy and advocacy at Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And Job, I mean, when we talk about competitiveness, because that's the yardstick. I mean, we look at majority of these big brands, you know, very nice brands, but you dig deeper, they make their things in China. So the money remains somehow a portion of it there. How do we become competitive? Especially looking at, first of all, the policy-wise. Compare for us, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi. Where are we in regards to making our products more competitive in this regional market?
I know what you look at is what are the inputs that we normally put in our processes. And after those inputs, how do we deliver our goods from our factories to where the consumption is taking place? All these supply chain, value chain, we must ensure that it is competitive. I'll give an example. When our goods are coming from the port of Mombasa, because we have intermediate goods and some of the raw materials that are imported from the rest of the world for value addition in the country, you have to look at the cost of freight. That is the shipping lines. Mm-hmm. You have to look at the cost of handling our goods at our ports. And in this, then you start now comparing our port of Mombasa and the port of Dar es Salaam. And you realize that our port of Mombasa has been higher ranked, but we have not really enhanced as far as our competitiveness is concerned for this port. And that's the reason why you see even this diversion of a collection of cargo by some of our landlocked countries like Uganda through Tanzania rather than coming through Kenya. It's because sometimes we're not competitive enough. When you talk about the cost of railage from the Mombasa port to Nairobi, or compare it to the road, and we're happy today they have been made to compete, and the owner of the containers or cargo, they can choose whether they're going to use the road or whether they're going to use railage. But I'm happy we're using more of the railage than the road. It's because over time we have tried to make it more competitive. When you come to the handling at ICDN here in Nairobi or ICDN in Naivasha, again, there are cost implications in terms of demurrage costs and storage costs. Sometimes not because the owner has refused to collect the container or the cargo, but it is administrative challenges and bottlenecks that are coming along the way. The custom document have not been cleared on time so that you can enjoy the free period. Mm-hmm. From there you come to the factory itself, the cost of electricity. If you compare ourselves with our peers in the region, Kenya is at 19 cents US dollars per kilowatt per hour. If you compare ourselves with Uganda, subsidized at 0.05. You go to Ethiopia at around 0.07. You go to Egypt, 0.06. You find we are not playing within the same league that would make us competitive as much as possible. We're appreciating the government and coming up with some subsidized power rates in our special economic zones, like now in Naivasha, at 0.05. But how can we see this getting replicated across the country so that we are more competitive? Mm-hmm. From there, then we get to the finished products from the factory. And factory, again, there are a multitude of issues that we look into. You get now to the outward costs. When you're moving from the factory to consumption from Kisumu to Nairobi to Mombasa, you find there is the county charges. There are national government charges. There is taxation that is coming into play. We have duplication of regulations. Many agencies, like that agencies are the ones that are regulating your business. And every agency has to collect some fees and charges. And then when you look at our destination again, when we are offloading our goods, the county government has to come again and collect. When we are branding our vehicles, again, they have to be charged. So when you look at all that, that's what is making Kenya to be at 108th position out of a possible 152 countries that participate in what is called Competitive Industrial Performance Index by United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. What it does is it looks at the competitiveness of the country. So that's why we are at 108, not 50 or 30. And that these are global statistics that have been brought together. So we need to be very resolute in terms of our policy development. I know we are currently in a tight fiscal space that is also making even our monetary space to be tight because of what we call the fiscal dominance. But if we make it very healthy over time, and then we see de-escalation of taxation, de-escalation of many agencies that are coming with multiple fees and charges, we see efficient flow along the supply and value chain, then we'll be able to export our goods and consume our goods locally at a more competitive pricing, rather than preferring goods that are imported from the rest of the world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've raised a very important point, and still on the issue of competitiveness, because it seems these bottlenecks, as we call them, they are motivated. I mean, a coin has two sides. So I'm thinking from one side, the government and these agencies bundle in the county government, governments with their cess, you know. I mean, a lot of traders have complained about the different trades cutting across counties. Just transporting goods from across this nation is quite a difficult task. And I'm looking the motivation of the other side that is creating these bottlenecks. Is there a way that we are addressing that? For example, the government wants to collect revenue, and you can't fault them for that. It takes money to run government. What case are you placing on the table to convince them to say, lower this particular rate when it comes to cost of power, for example?
Yeah.
And trust you me, this is what you'll achieve.
One thing, and we are happy that the government is listening, is that you cannot tax business out of business. Overtaxation leads to reduction in the taxes that you collect. Is what is called the other lava curve. The more you try to get from me, the more I'll find mechanisms of not you getting more from me. It's because there's this optimal position that it gets, and then you feel now you're going to fall off the cliff. So the more you impose taxes, the more you collect less. And statistics are showing right. By half year, Kenya Revenue Authority had collected less than they had expected, though they had ambitious targets. But when you have a higher target, right measures are put in place, and that's what we saw in the Finance Act 2023. But those right measures, somehow they are turning to be wrong measures. And that's why we are telling the government, let's sit down. From the private sector, we are willing to develop this country because self-reliance and self-dependence is very critical. So that you don't have all these externalities of, let's give you this loan and we cut this number of jobs, let's give you this loan and we privatize some institutions, they give you this kind of loan and then you do this. Self-reliance and self-dependence is very critical, and we support the President, or His Excellency the President, when he's saying that. But when it is done gradual, it becomes better. Because when you overtax a business, sometimes it's unable to move the next step, or it's unable to scale up to the next level. So what we are telling the government is that let's sit down and look at all these inconsistencies that are coming in the Finance Act, with multiple fees and charges, like now we saw with the Immigration Department, various, or introduction of or revision of fees and charges for the industrialists, and especially those who are like now in the export processing zone and whatnot. And when we do this, we will give what is due. And then the government should also on its side look at how can we have what is called fiscal consolidation measures. Because when you have a budget of 3.6 trillion and probably you're going to collect 2.4 to 2.5. That means the budget deficit is going to be huge. How is going to be breached? It is by borrowing. Again, when you borrow, you look at the interest rates.
Yes.
So it's a whole conversation going forward to ensure that we are optimizing from the side of the government and also from the side of the private sector.
Definitely. You've mentioned inconsistencies that have been brought about the Finance Act now, which is in place and has really disrupted business in a way that, we could do better, as you say. So talk to me a little bit about the impact that has had on your members as come. Are people relooking businesses? Are people looking at more competitive jurisdictions where they can set up? How are CAM members reacting to this?
All that is happening, and we will be very happy when the statistics are published publicly, so that we can all read from the same page. But simply put, we have some manufacturers who have shifted their production. Their bases are still here, but they have probably their sister companies in Uganda and Tanzania. And because we know what is called the custom union, whereby we trade freely among 7 partner states, that means I can produce my goods in Tanzania or Uganda, and they're consumed in Kenya without paying extra duty because we are in a custom union and a common market. So if the taxation regime here is so rigid and high, and Tanzania and Uganda, it is quite competitive, you go and do your production there. The extra cost that you incur is on transportation back to Kenya. So what have you lost there? You have lost the installed capacity in Kenya. And when you lose the installed capacity or utilization of the installed capacity, meaning you have lost jobs, meaning you have lost consumption of power, meaning you have lost optimal utilization of our infrastructure, like now our roads from where our factories are. We continue losing this. And not only that, even on the part of government, it is unable to do what is called revenue substitution. Otherwise, where it's looking at not getting the import duty, but now generating from revenues internally, you find that this is not happening. In fact, it's a loss on the government. And that's the reason why they are recording that 8% revenue collection by the end of 6 months, rather than hitting the 50%, where they can collect the other 50% in the next 6 months. And so the Finance Act has had that impact in terms of sometimes lack of unavailability of the raw materials and intermediate products that we continue claiming that are available in the country. And yet those who are doing the conversion and those who are doing the milling have sat down and agreed that these are the tariff lines, or these are the products that we can make locally. Others, these are the ones we cannot be able to make locally. We are going to build capacity over time. So Finance Act, yes, has had some impact, but what we are calling for is that can we sit down and have a discussion towards Finance Bill 2024.
Definitely. I remember early last year, the president had a sit down with manufacturers, and you guys presented him with a myriad of opportunities across all sectors, from the leather sector, just the potential within the country. And it was a very good presentation, and that's normally my fear with a lot of this state-related, we have very nice policies, but the actualization is quite different. So, Job, talk to me about the potential, first of all. I mean, the potential that we have within the country to service the market that has been taken by external players just by the fact that they're very competitive. I know one of the examples that we normally use is we don't even make our own toothpick. We like that one. So somebody is making toothpick, whereas we can make toothpick. So how much gap, if at all, we are to be serious to be able to make things our own and market within and take that share locally? How much gaps do we have to fill?
One thing that you have to look at is what is our comparative advantage, or what do we have in abundance as a country? And these are the opportunities that we present to the president. As said, over time, over a period of time, we need to stop importation of some of these goods under international trade laws, not illegally, or illegitimately under international trade laws. We have what is called the Custom Union Common External Tariff, whereby raw material comes at 0%. The finished goods that are in abundance production in the country are imported at a rate of 35% and above, so that you protect the local industries. So we have proposals around, like now, leather sector. If you look at the number of cattle, goats and sheep that can give us hide and skin, we have the largest. We are that largest in Africa. But we are the least consumers of that raw material. Yet, there's what we call the theory of industrial location, which states that industries are located closer to the raw materials. This is a raw material. But now, have we invested in factories that value add, like now tanneries, that value add, like now our leather? This is still wanting. We had a number of tanneries like 20 years or 30 years ago, but most of them have closed. Reason? We prefer exporting our raw hide and skin in its raw form, rather than when it is value added to wet blue, and then we have the leather, and then the leather products. In fact, Finance Act, it changed the export levy that was supposed to be a deterrent of exportation of raw hide and skin from 80% to 50%. So 50%, you can go pay and export. 80% was more punitive. So we say this is what is happening. And there are justified reasoning from the government side, but also there's a justified opposition from the private sector because we are being denied the raw material. There are various inconsistencies, again, that need to be looked into from the players within the private sector and the government, but these are things that we can harmonize so that our children, our sisters and our brothers can get jobs in production of leather products, from leather to leather product or fashion. From cotton, if you look at the potential that we have in the country, today we are talking of the BT cotton. That's what is being given as an input to our farmers. If you visit some of our companies that we have locally, but this is more towards cotton than other fabric types.
Yes.
You find that we have, again, very high potential. But again, value chain integration from cotton to fashion,
yes,
it needs to happen by having the right, ginaries, so that we can make we can make cotton to fabric, from fabric now to the clothes that we put on. Again, huge opportunities that are coming from Meru, that are coming from Lamu, that are coming from Western region. From there, you go to like now the production of pharmaceutical products. There is what is called 8 molecules that we can produce abundantly in the country. And we are looking at what is called the tariff split at the regional level, so that we can be able to supply these 8 molecules molecules is type of drugs that we produce in abundance in Kenya. How can we put a mechanism that is ensuring that we are, again, through international trade laws, we are barring the importation of these drugs, but by first of all mopping up what we are making locally. You move from one sector to the other, you find there are various opportunities.
Yes.
In fact, when I look at my phone, the number of CVs that I receive every day, I want a job. I normally feel we have opportunities, but not within the policy space that we're operating in. We need to be more serious so that all these people who are looking for jobs can get these jobs within where the cotton is and where the fashion is taking place.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So revamping the value chains, very critical.
Very critical.
Creating an enabling environment that is easier, because it has a ripple effect that is worthwhile. So do not tax heavy upfront, lower, widen the best when it comes to manufacturing and production-wise. Then from this larger base, you can collect even beyond your targets initially.
That's true.
Which is very, very critical. And briefly, since we have less than a minute to go, 2023 is still young. I know Valentine's is coming this week, and you are in love with the manufacturing sector. What should we be looking forward to this year? What will shape and tilt the winds and the direction of this year when it comes to manufacturing sector briefly?
We need to look at various macroeconomic factors. For
Yes.
instance, we need the stability of the forex, not shifting from 163 to 155, and when you get off market, it's 170 or something like that. That needs to be stabilized so that we have predictability in terms of money exchange.
Okay.
Secondly, interest rates also has skyrocketed at 13%. And this monetary policy measure that would be put in place is trying to look into how it can resolve some fiscal policy issues. This is not going to work. Let's separate the monetary policy issues and the fiscal policy issues. From the manufacturing perspective, let's drive the competitiveness of the manufacturing sector in terms of the power, the cost of power, in terms of labor, in terms of the finance bill 2024 that we're going to come up with. We're going to provide as much data as possible so that we can make this girl called Kenya more beautiful.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Job Wenjohi is the head of policy and advocacy at Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and he says that manufacturing holds so much potential, and that potential can only be tapped if we place the right tools and systems, make sure that the environment is enabling, at the same time empower the manufacturers to be more competitive within the country and outside the country. And that's when we have the ripple effect of jobs and contribution towards GDP and towards revenue, as it is a huge focus for the government. But that is matters manufacturing, competitiveness, and whatnot right here on Business Today. That's where we put a full stop. Today, I'm Nokip Kimboy. Up next, we have Mbiu KTN. Stay tuned.